Salvete discipuli. So this is our second video in the Latin for the New Millennium series. And today we're going to talk specifically about Latin nouns. So yesterday you learned about the different parts of speech, and we are going to do verbs and pronouns and adjectives and adverbs and all of those things. But for right now, we're going to focus on the part of speech known as nouns. So people, places, things, ideas, actions, things like that. Okay, Latin nouns have three characteristics, okay? They have gender, they have number, and they have case. So when you look at a Latin noun, that Latin noun is going to have a gender, it's going to have a number, and it's going to have a case, okay? Now, the options for gender are masculine, feminine, and neuter. And there are some Latin nouns that you're just going to know are going to be masculine. For example, the word for boy, the word for son, the word for man, all of these things are masculine. What you may not know is that Latin genders, for the most part, about things that maybe we in English would consider neuters, often have a masculine or a feminine gender. So, for example, the word for the land, terra, is feminine. It just is. And this is the way that it goes, you know. The word for a gate, porta, is feminine. Is there anything inherently feminine about a gate? Well, no. But the genders of Latin nouns are somewhat arbitrary. Okay, somewhat, not entirely, but somewhat. So, the way that you know what gender a noun is that you memorize it when you memorize your vocabulary words. Now, tomorrow in class, we're going to go over your Chapter 1 vocab words, and I'm going to talk about this then too, so just keep in mind, you have to memorize gender when you memorize your vocab words, okay? A Latin noun can be singular or plural. Makes sense, right? You can either talk about a man or you can talk about men. You can talk about a tree or you can talk about trees, okay? The last thing that a Latin noun has is a case. Now, let me explain cases. Latin nouns have cases that explain how that noun is functioning in the sentence, okay? So you should write that out. Case explains how a noun is functioning in the sentence. There are 6 cases. There are technically actually 7 cases, but the last case, the locative, is pretty rare. So there are 6 somewhat common cases. There's the nominative, the genitive, the dative, accusative, ablative, vocative. Vocative actually itself isn't all that common, but it's a lot more common than the locative, excuse me. Okay, now we are going to learn what function each one of these cases tells us over the course of the next couple of weeks. But for today, you just need to know that the nominative case, when a noun is in the nominative case, that tells you that it is the subject of the sentence. And that if a noun is in the accusative case, that tells you that it is the direct object of the sentence, okay? Now, this is different than English, because in English, we know how a noun functions based on where it falls in the sentence, right? Consider these 2 sentences in English. The boy loves the girl loves the boy, okay? The way that we know that the boy is the one who's doing the loving is because he comes before the verb, and therefore he is the subject. The girl comes after the verb, is receiving the action of the verb, and therefore is the direct object. The word order is what determines which one of these nouns, boy or girl, is the subject and which one is the direct object. In Latin, that's where case comes in. In this first sentence, puer, puellum, amat, puer is in the nominative, puellum is in the accusative, therefore we know that it's the nominative, the subject, the boy, who loves the girl. If we change these endings so that puella is now in the nominative case, not in the accusative case like in the first sentence. And puerum, now in the accusative case and no longer in the nominative case, that changes the meaning of the sentence. Now the subject is the girl, and the girl is the one who's loving the boy, okay? And that's how you can tell how nouns are functioning in Latin. Now, you have to know the endings that are associated with the nominative and the accusative cases so that when you see them in a sentence, you know to translate one as a nominative and one as an accusative. So, the way you do that is you memorize declension endings, okay? So all Latin nouns follow a pattern of endings called a declension. And there are 5 different patterns. So Latin nouns fall into one of these 5 patterns or declensions whose endings are distinct from each other, okay? Today, you are only learning the first declension. Okay, so you're going to learn the first pattern of endings, the first declension. You can always tell what declension a noun is in based on the ending in its genitive singular. If it ends in an AE, pronounced I, that's a first declension noun, and that's what we're going to learn today. If it ends in a long I, if the genitive singular ending ends in a long I, E, it's second. Is third. Us is fourth, and AE is fifth, okay? So now we need to talk about these first declension nouns that we're learning, okay? So we're going to learn how nouns in the first declension form those case endings so that when we see them in a sentence, we know that this one has the first declension accusative ending on it, and therefore it's the direct object of the verb. So let's talk a little bit about what things we can expect to find in the first declension. First declension nouns are mostly feminine, right? The gender of first declension nouns mostly feminine, but there are some very notable exceptions, including agricola, first declension noun, masculine, it means farmer. Nauta, poeta, athleta. So nauta, a sailor, poeta, a poet, and athleta, an athlete. All of these nouns are first declension, but they're not feminine gendered. They are masculine gendered. And again, you just have to memorize that when you memorize vocab. All you need to do is get your noun base and add the first declension endings on, and that's how you decline or put the noun into all of its possible cases in the singular and in the plural. You get the noun base by removing the genitive ending from the genitive form. Okay, so the genitive singular ending from the genitive singular form. Now, the only way you will know the genitive singular form is if you memorize the entire dictionary entry of a word when you, or of a noun, I should say, when you memorize your vocab. So when you are studying your vocab, you're going to see words like fortuna, fortunae, feminine. That dictionary entry is giving you the nominative singular form, the genitive singular form, and the gender, and that's all the information you need to be able to decline this noun. You need to have the genitive singular so you can know what declension it is, therefore you know what pattern of endings to use, okay? These are the first declension endings. And when you decline a noun without having it in context, in a translation context, there's sort of a standard way of translating the words, and this is how. Nominatives just translate as whatever they are. Genitive is of the whatever. Dative, to or for the whatever. Accusative is just what they are. Ablative, by, with, or from, whatever. And vocative is just whatever or oh, whatever. And we'll talk about those more later. So here's an example of how to decline a first declension noun. The dictionary or entry is fortuna, fortunae, and we know it's feminine because the dictionary entry tells us. We get our noun base by erasing or taking off the ending from the genitive singular. So we're going to add those endings from the previous slide onto the noun base fortune. Okay, fortune. So, fortuna, fortunae, fortunae, fortunam, fortuna, and then the vocative fortuna. Plural fortunae, fortunarum, fortunis, fortunas, fortunis, fortunae. Now you guys should copy this all down into your notes. I want to point out one quick thing before we end, which is that you will notice that the macron, or the long line above the A in the ablative singular for the first declension, is the only thing that differentiates this ending from the nominative ending. Okay? So that's a very important macron. You have to always put it to show me that you know that's ablative and not nominative. Okay? All right, there's a lot to digest, so take your notes. Be prepared to show them to me tomorrow in class, and we'll do some exercises to ensure you understand. Have a wonderful night, ladies. Walete.